report. Due to my 28 years experience in the auto salvage business, I'm very good with wrecks. So if your car's been involved in a wreck, call me for a diminished value report. Call 727-541-1741. You may owe some money for the lost value of your repaired vehicle. And visit us at GulfstreamMotorsports.com.
Calling all radio enthusiasts with storm claims and legal questions. Join us every Saturday at 2 p.m. on WTAN FM 106.1 and AM 1340 for Legal Candy with attorney Candace Colucci. She's your guide to hurricane-related issues, property insurance law, and more sizzling legal topics. Get ready for a lively legal experience. Make your Saturday sweet with Legal Candy on WTAN FM 106.1 and AM 1340.
Hi, this is Paul Malloy, host of Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show. I hope you'll join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, where we strive to bring you the libertarian perspective on political events of the day. There's no show quite like Freedom Works, with in-depth interviews, our ultimate top 10 list, and so much more. So join us for Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, and Merry Christmas from Sci-Fi Hour here at Joy on Paper Radio. My name is Bria Burton, and I am the guest host, filling in for the amazing Patsy Gill. And I am thrilled to invite you all to come in, listen, grab your cup of coffee or cocoa, and we're going to be talking to two incredible sci-fi authors. And before we introduce our very first author, Charles A. Cornell, I've got a book buzz to play that will introduce you to his brand new series starter called Reborn. Go ahead with that, Big Ed.
Hello, fellow sci-fi readers. This is author Rhea Burton reporting for Joy on Paper with your science fiction book buzz. Today's Communique to Galaxies Near and Far includes a first contact sci-fi novel, Reborn, by Charles A. Cornell, book 1 in the Astrogenesis series. The novel is available in print and ebook. Now, let's download the book buzz. Nikki Akaju serves as an emergency doctor in the Western Coalition, a portion of the United States that survived a devastating nuclear war. An emergency call-up from the military sends her headlong into a classified mission aboard a derelict ship anchored offshore with a suspected biohazard of unknown origin. But the mission ends abruptly, and she's left with less answers than when she joined. Nikki takes the opportunity to check in on her mother, and the visit yields a family history lesson that could tie the genetic research of her ancestors to key current events. Meanwhile, astronaut Zhu Chenzi witnesses the sudden arrival of an astrological anomaly in the form of a radiation cloud of unknown origin while in orbit aboard the International Star Observatory. The cloud approaches at near light speed, clear and present danger to everyone on the station. These connected mysteries evolve into an Earth-wide crisis in an already devastated post-apocalyptic landscape. While author Charles A. Cornell survives the daily chaos of life on Earth, he dreams up all kinds of crazy fiction with his overactive imagination. He specializes in science fiction, science fantasy, diesel punk, and steampunk, plus award-winning mystery thriller from a writer's den in a small village in North Lincolnshire, England, with the occasional interference from his ginger tabby cat, who claims to be from another dimension and will push him through a wormhole if he is not fed on demand. This is Bria Burton with your futuristic fiction fix, signing off.
And welcome, Charles. I am so thrilled to have you back at Joy on Paper Radio.
I'm so pleased to be able to participate. It's great.
And it's been a little while since you've come on the show, and we were on together, a couple years ago, maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to make up a number. It was a few years back, and we were talking Alvarium experiment. We were talking about steampunk that you'd been writing, and all kinds of exciting things have also happened since then, such as your new series.
Yes.
And
series is
I had to bring up the fact that as we're both part of this Alvarium Experiment group of authors that collaborate together, this series originated from one of your short stories that we wrote. We wrote an anthology together called Return to Earth. It was our second ever Alvarium Experiment anthology, and that was the original premise in terms of you writing this new series, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The Return to Earth anthology had the short story Children of the Stars, which is kind of the origin story. I'm calling it the origin story for this new series. And it's very often, I think, that we write a short story and think, boy, wouldn't that be a good novel? And then you start thinking even more about sequel to that novel. And eventually, this whole journey that I've been on with this story has created the first trilogy. The next two novels will be published next year, but Reborn is book one.
Yes. Okay. And so just to backpedal slightly, I have to also mention I had the wonderful privilege of chatting last month in November for Sci-Fi Hour. I got to talk to authors John Hope and Ken Pelham, also authors of the Alvarium Experiment. And we did a big announcement letting everybody know we have another anthology coming. So I just briefly wanted to talk about that and say, you will be joining us with the cover art portion. And
That's right.
Yeah. And so I'm going to hold up one of the anthologies right now. I happen to bring The Light Fantastic with me to the studio today. So I wanted to show this one in particular. This was the last anthology we put out together after the pandemic. We wanted to make everybody laugh. So it's sci-fi, fantasy, horror, humor. And so this time we are going to be doing sci-fi, fantasy, horror, which is the speculative fiction genres. So spec fic with pet humor. And so it's specifically pet humor is the big broad premise for this upcoming anthology that we hope to release early next year. And you have we have to talk about your cover art for a minute, because you have done the covers for every anthology that we have for the Alvarium Experiment. And every time I go to a book signing and I have these beautiful covers on display, people are just drawn to them. So you're an author, you're a writer, but you also do this incredible cover art. Will you talk to us just a little bit about how did you even get into doing cover art, and tell us what your inspiration has been?
Yes. Well, I think I've done, because of all of the individual stories being published by each author as a short story available on Kindle, I've also done the Kindle cover art for everyone.
Which is also amazing. You've done a lot of covers for us.
I think I've done 85.
Oh, wow.
85 covers that includes my own, as well as some friends of mine that reached out to me and asked for cover art. Basically, when you're an independently published author, the cost of publishing, most people don't appreciate when they buy a book for whatever the cost is, how much cost there is in getting that into their hands. And one of the biggest costs has been cover art. And I was always good at some creative elements, and I just taught myself Photoshop. And all of the cover art are basically Photoshop photo montages. So in some cases, I'm using art that I license. Other cases, it's art that I have created by merging images together. And in many cases, some of the covers that we've done, there's 4 or 5 different images used to produce a single cover. And it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy doing it for my fellow authors because I know how expensive that process can be with art.
And it's
not AI.
Thank you for mentioning that. I was just going to say, it's one of the things that we as a group, everybody has something to contribute. You contribute cover art, which is huge for our group. But I am so glad you brought up that it's not AI generated, because that's something we as a group have agreed that we're not doing AI generated writing content, because we're all writers. We do not rely on AI to write for us. We are the creatives. And we also don't do that with the cover art that you do for us. And so we can honestly say that we're an AI-free group of authors for our anthologies and for what you get when you do get that final product, whether it's the Kindle single stories from each individual author or the print anthology that, like, I'm the one I'm holding up right now, that people can buy from each of us authors, and it's on Amazon. And that's that. We could spend a lot of time just talking about that topic, about AI and art, AI in writing, and what that all the implications there. But let's talk a little bit about your book. So what thread would you say? So if someone were to go read your short story from Return to Earth, would you call that the prequel to this next story? Or how would you ask them if they wanted to start somewhere?
Yes. You don't have to read it, but it is referenced a lot in Reborn as the backstory. Reborn is set in the year 2097. And I set we published our Return to Earth anthology in 2016, and the story was actually set in 2006. Now, you might think that is very specific and unusual, but I had to age people. I had to create another backstory occurred after the Second World War. So basically in Children of the Stars, it describes a mystery that occurred that started after World War II. And a medical researcher from the U.S. named Amari Parks goes to Japan because he's discovered that there are pockets of women around the world with what I would describe as superhuman fertility. Their pregnancies lasted as short as 4 months. They had sometimes 2 births in a single year, and each birth occurred with identical twins. And he's discovered these pockets of women all around the world, primarily in remote areas like the Brazilian Amazon jungle, and he discovers another group in remote mountain village in Japan. And he goes there and with his Japanese colleague, who's also doing that research, and he encounters a close encounter of the third kind. An alien ship arrives, an alien descends from the ship, and basically supervises the birth of these twins, and then takes the mother and the babies away. Now, at that point, he is murdered, and he's murdered by something called the Association. The Association plays a huge part in the book Reborn. And I created that term, the Association, to represent the children of the stars, the children of the mothers who have essentially been abducted by aliens to give birth for them. And so that short story ended with the murder of Amari Parks. In Reborn, we follow the story of his twin brother, Dante Parks. And Dante Parks has spent his entire life researching the genetics behind what the aliens have done to us. And the children of the stars he calls the Reborn. That's where the title comes from. So, so now we accelerate the story from Dante Parks has died, and we accelerate the story to the year 2097. In 2035, there is a nuclear civil war in the United States. I won't go into too much detail about it, but what I wanted to say was that a lot of post-apocalyptic stories do not share what the apocalypse was, how it was created, and why, and what happened afterwards. Essentially, you're transported to a time beyond the apocalypse where the world is entirely different. And you see this a lot in movies where people are struggling to survive and they're on various treks and missions and journeys. But you don't really see the apocalypse or understand what it was. So one of the things I wanted to do with Reborn was to share that. Now, a lot of the time, we think of a dark post-apocalyptic dystopian future as being something that occurred out of one singular event. This didn't occur out of one singular event. It occurred out of a multiple events. And I just want to share that with you. We often think of World War III being a nuclear war. This is where I grew up. I'm a little older than you, Bria, but I grew up when the United States and Soviet Union were had their fingers on the button, and when they pressed
Cuban Missile Crisis, yeah,
the whole world would be destroyed. There is no surviving it. But I think the future I'm projecting, which is dark, is about regional nuclear wars, where two countries with nuclear weapons have at each other. And what that does is it creates what I call nuclear exclusion zones. There's a nuclear exclusion zone around the Chernobyl nuclear plant in the Ukraine, for example. And it basically, people can't go in there, crops won't grow. So there are regional nuclear wars. Then there are pandemics. We're now a post-pandemic society where we've seen the results of pandemic. There are more of those that kill people. And there are global warming-related disasters, but more importantly, famines. And we're seeing that now. So if you extrapolate that into the future and you add it all up, the population of the Earth right now is about 9 billion people. And in Reborn, it's reduced down to 2. So 7 billion people have died in the 60-odd years between now and 2097. And so let's go to 2097. Let's live that existence. What we have is a pocket of humanity on the west coast of the United States. There's a reason for that. It's in the book, so I won't share a spoiler on that. But this pocket of humanity is divided into military districts. And there are haves and have-nots. The haves, the Federation's citizens, live a fairly normal life. They're not particularly wealthy. There are wealthy people, but they're not living the high life. But there are have-nots who are in closed cities behind formidable barriers, essentially like giant city-wide concentration camps. And so that is the environment we see. So there's two perspectives in Reborn. I wanted to share, on top of that, so we have a post-apocalyptic world and things are not exactly the way you'd like them to be.
Right, yes.
A lot of danger. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to show an alien invasion from two different perspectives, one on the ground on Earth and one in space. So in order to do that, I have to have two protagonists. I have to have someone on the ground looking at the alien invasion as we would in a city, and another person on a space station called the International Star Observatory. So the two characters, Nikki Akaju is an emergency doctor. She works in a hospital and she responds to traumas by air ambulance. And Zhu Chenzi is a brilliant astrophysicist. She's basically not only is the astronaut, the lead astronaut on the space station, but she helped design it. She's that good. And so she's in this star observatory. And so what we now have is we have an alien invasion. And Nikki Akaju doesn't realize it, but her family background ties to Dante Parks and Amari Parks. She is a direct descendant of those two doctors. And Dante Parks, his archive of research is lost and contains all the secrets of what the aliens have done to re-engineer the human DNA and create the reborn. Now, the reborn live among us. They are part of society, and you can't tell the difference between them and yourself. And but they have a connection to the aliens, and they are controlled by the aliens, and they communicate with the aliens. And so you basically have an enemy, an external enemy, the invasion force, the aliens, and you also have an internal enemy, which is the reborn. So society is already on the cusp. It's struggling to survive in a world of climate change. Most of the western United States is desert. Water comes from desalination plants. Things don't grow except in agrodomes and greenhouses. So you've got that struggle already in the post-apocalyptic world. There's not much trade going on. But in the western part of the U.S., you have an enclave of very high technology. You have a moon colony, and you have the ability to launch satellites and space planes to the moon, as well as to the Star Observatory. So there's one aspect on the ground, and the other aspect is in space. And so that's the whole
yes,
you want to call it the environment that I've worked.
Yes, that inviting readers into that world. And you released Reborn this year, and you mentioned it's a trilogy.
Well, actually,
is it going to go beyond?
Yeah, I if I live long enough, but I have actually got 10 books planned.
Oh, okay. We're not stopping at trilogy. I love it. Okay, so tell the listeners about your release schedule so they can get their hands on Reborn today, because it's available on Amazon, and they can go. Remind us of your website so that they can look at all of what you've got.
It's Cornell-Sci-Fi, SCIFI.com, or CharlesACornell.com will also get you there.
Okay.
And there are links. There's a whole description of Reborn, and there are links to, the web where you can buy it. It's exclusively on Amazon. I've gone exclusive with Kindle Unlimited, and I'm getting a lot of reads on Kindle Unlimited.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So those listeners who do Kindle Unlimited can get their copy of Reborn. Yeah. And what does your release schedule look like for those readers who are finished? They finish the book and they go, wait a minute, where's the next one? I need it.
Yes. The second book was intended to come out before the end of the year and has now been rescheduled for early part of the new year. Probably February, and the third book should be March. I'm going to try to put them together.
Oh, tell me about that. Now you were mentioning independent author. You get to decide how to do this. So both books are on schedule to release February, March of 2025. So books 2 and 3. Right.
I have the initial draft of Resist, which is book 2. So the trilogy is Reborn, Resist, and Reclaim.
Okay.
And in Resist, we find how the society is broken down, the invasion has occurred, the Reborn are fighting us, we're fighting the aliens. It's all kind of a mess. How do we get out of that? There's a resistance movement, and so that's how that happens. We also find out why the aliens are doing this. Because there isn't anything in Reborn that actually tells you
the why behind their motives. Okay.
And then Reclaim is what I would call the final battle. I think I've already given the spoiler in that if there's more books beyond that, then obviously we win.
We'll see. I don't know. You're still working on it. Maybe you get to
how
decide.
We win, and it's going to be very interesting because I'm going to use. I won't say much about it, but I'm going to use an ancient myth as the way in which we win against the aliens.
Okay. Myth. I have guesses. I don't want to throw them out there because
no, don't do that. But let me tell you something about the series. One of the things that it doesn't exactly bother me because imagination is infinite, and people's imaginations and readers' imaginations vary. In science fiction, in particular, they vary the gamut. But one of the things that bothers me right now is that there's a lot of science fiction out there that is super far future, 3,000 years into the future.
Sure, yeah.
And everything is kind of like space opera. It's all like Star Wars and Star Trek, where you have these incredible machines and technologies, and people fly back and forth between planets with it, just like we would take a bus or a train or an airplane. And one thing that always bothers me about that story is, how did we get there?
Sure,
how did we
yes.
get from here today, you and I today talking on the radio, to a civilization that actually travels to stars? So in creating this book, what I wanted to do was show a progression. And one of the reasons I wanted to explore how we got there. How do we go beyond the moon, beyond Mars, into the stars? How do we do that? So the first trilogy is what I would call the Cerulean invasion. Ceruleans are the people that we're fighting as an invasion. And the next trilogy after that is kind of like our first step beyond our solar system. How do we get beyond our solar system? And then in the latter part of the series, the third trilogy is our adventures into the stars, if you wish. In one case, I want to have two spaceships leaving our solar system in separate directions, kind of like, well, if one doesn't make it, the other one will.
And I love it. I can't believe we're out of time, Charles. I could talk to you all day, but I am so thrilled for you and this series and what's coming. And readers, do go check out Charles's website, follow him on social media, and we are going to join our next guest after commercial break. Charles, we will definitely have you back on the show.
Thank you very
great
much.
to talk to you.
Thanks a lot, Bria.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And we're off to commercial break. We'll be back with the amazing Nancy Kress, award-winning author.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Looking for inspiration? Looking for something that will intrigue you? Then this book is for you. Jim Lamb's poems start out as caterpillars, creepy, crawly, and raw. Then a miracle happens as they transform into colorful, bright, and conspicuous works of art. You can find Jim's new book of poetry, Hurting Butterflies, at Amazon.com. It's the perfect gift for the book lover in your life, even if it's you. Hurting Butterflies, the perfect holiday gift, available on Amazon. Get Hurting Butterflies.
Do you dread being called on to speak at meetings or family functions? Have you envied those who can sway an audience with well-chosen words? Do you know that people who speak well earn more money, earn more rewarding careers? Gain the confidence to master any speaking situation. Toastmasters will allow you to find your voice. Go to toastmasters.org to locate the club nearest you.
Are you an author, an artist, an inventor? Then you need to protect your valuable intellectual property. You need Larson & Larson. We have the experience and knowledge to help you with all of your legal needs, from processing trademark, copyright, or patent applications to negotiating licensing agreements and handling litigation. The attorneys at Larson & Larson in Largo, Florida can help protect you. Call us today for a no-cost consultation at 727-546-0660 or visit our website at larsonpatentlaw.com.
Have you ever faced disaster? The Red Cross is always there for you. The Red Cross responds to a call for help every 8 seconds. They have never turned anyone down. Now they need your financial support so that they can be ready to help you when the need arises. Donate online at redcross.org. Thank you.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, and welcome back to Sci-Fi Hour. We have another incredible author, Nancy Kress. And before we get chatting, I would like to introduce her book, Observer, co-authored with Robert Lanza, by sharing a book buzz. Go ahead, Big Ed.
Hello, fellow sci-fi readers. This is author Bria Burton reporting for Joy on Paper with your science fiction book buzz. Today's Communicate to Galaxies Near and Far includes a sci-fi medical thriller, Observer by Robert Lanza and Nancy Kress, with stellar narration by Stacy Glemboski. This #1 national bestseller is available in print, ebook, and audiobook. Now, let's download the book buzz. Dr. Caro Soames Watkins hopes to leave a tarnished reputation behind when she considers taking on a risky and experimental research position with her great uncle. At a remote facility in the Cayman Islands, she is introduced to the team and to an extraordinary theory on the multiverse that a physicist claims to be able to prove. A skeptical Caro remains open to the possibilities. Her belief in the project's thesis is not required as the neurosurgeon who will be implanting a brain chip in the test subject. But should she take on all the risks when there has already been one death on the island? Equal parts medical thriller and philosophical sci-fi, this page-turning novel blends the scientific with the fiction in Crichton-esque fashion while plumbing the depths of humanity's most essential questions. Author Dr. Robert Lanza has been named one of Time magazine's most 100 influential people in the world and was part of the team that cloned the world's first human embryo, as well as the first to successfully generate stem cells from adults using somatic cell nuclear transfer, therapeutic cloning. Author Nancy Kress has written 33 books, and her work has won 6 Nebulas, 2 Hugos, a Sturgeon, and the John W. Campbell Memorial Award. Her writing has been translated into 24 languages, including Klingon. In addition to writing, Kress often teaches at various venues around the country and abroad. Kress lives in Seattle with her husband, writer Jack Skillingstead, and Pippin, the world's most spoiled chihuahua. This is Bria Burton with your Futuristic Fiction Fix, signing off.
Welcome back to Joy on Paper, Nancy. I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to you again.
Well, thank you for having me back, Bria.
It's been a couple years, and now so we spoke about The 11th Gate, one of your novels, a standalone sci-fi that I absolutely loved. And then you've got this book you've co-authored with Robert Lanza, Dr. Robert Lanza. And I just want to start by saying it is fascinating, and I had a blast reading it. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you even get connected with Robert, and what led you to decide to co-author this book?
Well, Bob Lanza is, as you pointed out in your introduction, a very eminent genetic scientist, but he also is interested in the role of consciousness in the universe. And he has a theory about this called biocentrism. He wrote 4 books about it, but he wanted to reach a different audience. All of those books are nonfiction. Now he wanted to embody his ideas in a novel, but he never wrote a novel. Didn't want to write a novel, had no idea how to go about writing a novel. So he contacted a firm in New York City called Gotham Ghostwriters, which is one of the premier firms in the country. It was founded by Joseph Lieberman, speechwriter, and said that he would like to be hooked up with a science fiction writer. Gotham Ghostwriters had never done a fiction novel either. They usually hook up writers with business leaders or politicians that want to write a nonfiction book. And a novel was new for them. So looking through the reviews in Publishers Weekly, they came across the review of my husband's book, The Chaos Function, Jack Skillingstead. And it seemed to involve the multiverse. Well, it does involve the multiverse. So they called Jack.
Yes.
They called Jack and said, would you be interested? And he said, no, I don't think so, but my wife might. So they contacted me, and I read one of the biocentrism books, and we had a couple of 3-way conversations between the liaison and Bob Lanza and me, and that's how I decided to do it.
Oh, that is what a neat way to go about co-authoring a book. And so tell us just a little bit about that process. How much of the novel was you bringing in your expertise as a sci-fi novel? And I'm going to say expert because as the introduction I mentioned, you have won Nebulas, Hugos, a Sturgeon, the John W. Campbell Memorial Award. You are a well-awarded author in the science fiction genre. So bringing that to the table, how much of the story itself, the narrative of, we've got Caro, Soames Watkins, the doctor, the main character, and then all these other characters that come alongside her. How much of that was you, and how much of it was him contributing, if as much as you can explain that process?
It's actually not as complicated as I think it is when you have two fiction writers collaborate. The characters are mine. The characters are mine.
Okay.
The situations are mine. And I did the actual writing. What Bob wanted was control over the science. He wanted to start, as the book does, with actual science, and then build slowly up to the point where he has laid a foundation for his theories. So one of the challenges was getting enough of the actual real science in there without boring people who are not science geeks. And we worked on that together. And we also developed elements of the plot together. The way it would work is I would write a chunk, send it to Bob. He would, and then we would have a phone conversation and talk about any changes that needed to be made and where it might go next. I had some very definite ideas what I wanted the characters' arcs to be, but the actual arc of the book itself, the plot, we developed together. However, all of the actual words that are on the page are mine.
Okay. That sometimes there are, not sometimes, frequently, there are many different varieties in terms of co-authoring books. I know James S.A. Corey is a group of two authors who write the Expanse series, for example.
Oh yeah, I know Daniel and Ty.
Do you really? Oh, I love it. So I adore that series, and so that their method, I understand, is a little bit different than what you just described. So this is one of those kind of neat things where there's a lot of options. There's a lot of takeaways that authors could come away with as they maybe consider co-authoring with a fellow author, whether it be you're a sci-fi author and you want to write with a scientist, or what you're doing here. I love it.
Yeah, there are many, many ways to collaborate. And I think that any two writers work them out as they go the first time they do it. But again, both for S.A. Corey, both Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank are fiction writers.
Right.
So they would have a different input into the fiction that they're developing together than Bob and I did.
Right, absolutely. And so yeah, this is one of those more, ghostwriting is actually a great way to put it, in the sense of the ghostwriter doesn't typically have their name on the novel, but I like the kind of twist that you get to say, yes, this is me. I'm part of this book, and I wrote these words. And often ghostwriters don't even have their name on a book.
Right. And although Gotham Ghostwriters connected us, I wasn't really a ghostwriter.
Yeah, right, yes. And so keeping that in mind, what have you kind of come away with having done this project? Is this something that you want to do more of? Are you thinking, gosh, I'm just getting great ideas for my next series or my next novels?
I don't think I'm a natural collaborator.
Okay.
One reason this did work, Bria, is, as you say, everybody has their own methods. And here I had control of the prose and the characters. And I think I would not be really good at sharing that. I'm not basically a team player. But
I think you're selling yourself short, because you did a team player. It just looked a little different in this team compared to how other teams do it. I think it's all fair game. It's still great teamwork.
Well, thank you.
And are you still in touch with, you called him Bob. Not that I know him on that personal level, but are you and Bob still in touch and connecting on just some of the aftermath of the book coming out?
Yes, we are. We just signed a contract for it to be translated into Italian. And it is also sold in Russia. And our agent is sending it out other places. It has a little strange publication history.
Oh, tell us.
It was originally published by a smaller press which is now going out of business. So the contract has been bought by a major press, Tor, because it did well enough as a small press.
You said Tor bought it?
Yes,
Tor.
Yes,
Tor. Very well-known publisher. Yes, in the sci-fi fantasy world. Yep.
And they are reissuing it next year. In the meantime, the ebook is available, but they will be reissuing it in hardcover and trade paper next year with a new cover.
Okay.
And
that is so exciting.
It is. And we're very glad that it's getting a second life, because we didn't expect the small press to have as many financial difficulties, not with our book, but with everybody else's.
I see. Yes, I understand. Yeah, it's quite a world out there, the publishing world, because there are speaking of options, there's independent authors, there's traditional publishers, authors do have a lot of options. So not everybody is even choosing traditional publishing anymore. And so, that's all part of the business aspect, which as an author, so much of what you're doing is the writing. You don't, I imagine you put your book in the hands of the publisher because you would like them to do more of the business aspect and let you get back to the writing part.
Actually, I put it in the hands of my agent.
There you go. Okay, yes.
And then it's his problem.
Right, yes. And
I'm not really good at the business end. And so I trust my agent, and it goes from there.
I love it. And obviously he's doing wonderful for you, because having now this book gets its new life next year, and we'll be talking about it again as it re-releases. I'm looking forward to that. Let's talk about the book itself for this last 15 minutes that we have. So, the premise behind it, we've got this Dr. Soames Watkins has a little bit of a disgraced, not of her own fault, but she ends up becoming essentially kind of a disgraced neurosurgeon. And then she's off to this semi-experimental research facility where she's going to have to decide, is she going to participate as the neurosurgeon implanting these brain chips? And then there are the cast of characters that are there trying to convince her to join their experimental proposition. And so talk a little bit about some of these characters. You've got, is it Caro? Is that how she pronounces it? Caro, yes. Caro. And you've got her great uncle, who is a Nobel laureate, Dr. Sam Watkins, and there is a physicist on the island. There are high-tech software engineer. There's all sorts of different people coming together to try to prove something. So talk a little bit, as much as you want to spoil or not spoil.
Okay. The basic scientific conceit here is built on some existing technology that sounds fantastic, but it really exists. Mm-hmm. And the Japanese especially have been doing work with this. If you hook up people to machines that can, functional MRIs essentially, that can read brain waves and show where there is different activities in the brain, and pinpoint it very accurately. And I've taken it farther than, of course, we can now. You actually can get a translation onto a screen of what it is that they are thinking. If you were hooked up to this Bria, even now, and you were told, first you have to be trained on it. You were told, think of a horse, and they got the exact configuration that you would get of brainwaves when you're thinking of a horse. Then when you go back and you're thinking of a horse, they can see on a screen what you were thinking of. I have that technology exists. It's called deep brain imaging, and I have taken it to the next level because, after all, this is the future and it is science fiction, where they can get pretty detailed ideas of what is going on in somebody's brain and what they're seeing. Now, how does this relate to the idea of consciousness in the universe? Well, again, Bob Lanza has a theory about how consciousness is connected from the universe to the human beings. And not all of this is theory. We do know, because of course it's completely true and has been for a very long time, that if you take subatomic particles, how their behavior is influenced by whether or not they are being observed. And as this goes on, the research, it gets more and more amazing. We also know what Einstein called spooky action at a distance exists, which is that if two particles are entangled, even if they are nowhere near each other, if you do something to one, it will affect the other one. And by entangled, I mean that they were entangled before they were separated.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much we don't understand about the universe. But consciousness, human consciousness, seems connected to it and able to influence it in some ways. So that was the jumping off point, because those experiments exist. They've existed for a very long time, since the 50s, or even earlier, 1950s. So building on that, the book builds carefully. And this was the hardest part of the writing, again, as I said, to get actual science in there without having it be so much that it overwhelms.
You don't want the reader
readers.
glossing over. For example, Tom Clancy is known for his high, detailed, get in there, and some readers love that, but other readers don't so much. They want to get to the story a little bit more. But I and just to comment, I thought you beautifully integrated narrative with the science personally. So just my two cents.
You. Thank you. What you have to do when you're doing that is to give all of the characters a personal stake in what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they do. They have a personal stake, which, again, I won't spoil by saying. But the physicist, the elderly physicist, Dr. George Weigart, has a personal stake. Julian has a personal stake. The team consists, there's an entire hospital down there that's been working on this for 15 years. But the basic team consists of Caro, the neurosurgeon who needs to put the chips in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Samuel Watkins, who is the Nobel laureate genius behind all this. Weigart, the physicist who came up with the science behind it. And Julian, who is the tech wizard. He's a tech bro, brilliant tech bro type. Mm-hmm. All these people disappeared, except for Caro, 15 years ago. I don't mean they disappeared in that nobody knew where they were, but they withdrew to this facility in the Cayman Islands, which is where you want to go if you want to hide a lot of money, or anything, or pretty much anything else. And that's why the facility is built there. Mm-hmm. And they disappeared from the scientific world, and nobody quite knew what they're working on. And then when the book opens, their neurosurgeon dies in a diving accident, a stupid diving accident. Mm-hmm. And they need another one, and they need him fast, or her fast. And this is where Caro comes in. You mentioned that she is disgraced. She's actually been the victim of...
Yes, that's a much better way to put it. Yes.
Yeah, of a sexual assault. And then it's followed by an online shitstorm of the type that we're unfortunately all too familiar with from trolls. Mm-hmm, and this makes her, gives her employment problems.
Right.
And she needs to find a job fast because she's the support of her sister who has a neurologically damaged child and also another child to support, and a husband who just disappeared years ago and can't be found. Mm-hmm. So, and Caro and her sister Ellen are very close. And that gives Caro a personal stake in this too.
Yes.
And as it goes on, she gets more of a personal stake.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mentioned again in the book buzz, it is a page turner. I very much had Crichton in mind as I'm reading it. One of my all-time favorite sci-fi novels is Jurassic Park. And there's even
Oh, mine too.
Is it really? There's even, I don't think this is a spoiler to give this broad, there is a Nedry character in the book. And that's immediately what I thought of when it kind of is revealed later, something that happens that is kind of nefarious. And so I kept thinking about Michael Crichton and the way that you write, your prose is so compelling. And as a author myself, I love reading authors like yourself who just are a masterclass as I'm reading and continuing to get my own craft up to the next level. So I appreciate reading your stuff just for that reason alone, plus enjoying your stories so much. And so, yeah, I, of course, want everybody to get their hands on this book. And if they go, if they go right now to Amazon, you're saying, even though it's not in print but it is in Kindle. And is it also an audiobook? Am I correct about that?
Yes, it is.
And so it's on Amazon. It's on all the major retailers in the ebook form. Wonderful. And then where can people go to look at your, speaking of all the books you've authored, the other 33 books, such as The 11th Gate, which I'm going to shout out because it was one of the books that I loved of yours. Tell everybody your website, if you have any social media presence where people can follow you and keep up with everything.
I do have a website at nancycrest.com, but I'm afraid it's woefully out of date.
Okay.
I am really not much good at the computer end of this thing. I drive my computer the way I drive my car. I want it to go, but I don't want to look under the hood.
I love that analogy.
It only does I only do very basic things. I am, however, on Facebook, and I can be followed there as Nancy Crest.
Okay, Facebook. And when is there a date for the re-release of Observer? This is Observer by you and Robert Lanza. Is this re-release date put in there now for next year, or is it coming? Like people will find out.
It's coming. I don't exactly know when the release date is.
Okay, all the more reason, listeners, follow Nancy, keep up with her so that when that date comes out, you'll get it right away and get your pre-order in. I imagine they'll be doing pre-orders.
Yes, they will.
Okay, wonderful. And I'm so thrilled to have you back. And what else are you working on? Do you have a novel in progress right now? Are you taking a little hiatus? What's happening with you in terms of?
I do have.
Okay,
I do have a novel in progress, and it's much different. One of the things about my career, if I had stuck to the same kind of book, not the same book, but the same kind of book over and over, I'd probably be richer because the advice they often give new writers, build a brand. Well, I've never built a brand. So what I'm writing now is entirely different. It's a historical fantasy set in the court of Henry VIII.
Oh my goodness. That sounds so fun.
It's called The Queen's Witch.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. I also I have short stories in many genres, so it's hard when you're passionate about writing something, whatever the idea is. It doesn't always fit with that nice, neat brand. So I love it. How about in terms of your 33 books? Do you have other fantasy, or is this one of the first times you're writing fantasy?
My first 3 books were fantasy, but I don't really like them anymore.
Okay.
There's a lot of my early books
another one.
But now I know a lot more than I did 45 years ago.
I love it. Love it. Okay.
I'm returning to fantasy. But the 3 books you've mentioned during this interview, Observer is a medical bio thriller, as you pointed out. 11th Gate is space opera.
Yes.
And The Queen's Witch is historical fantasy. So I'm not building the kind of fan base saying, oh, I really like medical thrillers and that's what Nancy Crest writes.
Right.
I'm not doing that. But I'm writing the things I want to write and that I love and that I'm passionate about.
And I think that comes out in the incredible writing that you have. And I hate that we're out of time because, again, just like my previous guest, I could talk to you all day. But Nancy, thank you so much. I look forward to having you back in the future. And I just so appreciate your book, Observer. And I just want to tell everybody, go get it. Go get your copy now and then get your hard copy when it comes out next year. So we'll talk to you again.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of your day and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Oh, this hour always flies by. And in the spirit of Christmas, I have something that I just want to read before we say goodbye. Many of you may know that I'm an author of faith. I'm a sci-fi fantasy spec fic author, but I also have a faith in Jesus Christ. And so I'm going to just briefly read from the Gospel of Luke. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord." So on that note, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas in the listening area. If you're watching on social media, thank you so much for tuning in. Patsy Gill, our wonderful guest at Joy on Paper, I just so appreciate you and all that you do. And Big Ed, thank you in the studio for all that you're doing as the wonderful producer. So everyone, take care, go grab your sci-fi novels and get reading. I'll talk to you all next month, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye-bye now.